All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. Welcome to Beyond COVID-19, presented by the Bill Mervin team. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day and joining us. Yes, it is beyond haircut season, but there's nowhere to get hair. No, just kidding. Not a lot of that happening right now, but we realize everybody's been kind of home, and we wanted to present an event to you that's the optimist case for getting through this and getting beyond it stronger than we went into it. So without any further ado, our team leader, our regional producing manager, Bill Mervin, take it away, Bill.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you guys all for joining us. I realize it was an easy audience with everybody more or less trapped in their house, but we're appreciative either way. So yeah, as Matt shared, and as any of you guys who have been watching any of the, or seeing any of the promotional material, as Matt said, we want to present the optimist case for how we perhaps might make it through this pandemic and the situation that we're all, this very challenging situation we're all dealing with, perhaps earlier than many might suspect, and perhaps stronger than many might be expecting. And then just at the same time, focusing on what we can control and what we can do to make sure that when we do emerge, because obviously there's still a lot of unknowns around, around the timeline and so on and so forth. But what can we control to make the most of and be prepared to do what we can coming out the other side? So, with that, let's first start with, why. I feel, what I feel that again, that we may emerge from this sooner and stronger. At least that than the storyline that some are sharing that seems to be all doom and gloom. So, I've had a lot of conversations with some individuals in particular. A lot of my material, I'm going to say it right now and I'll say it again. Barry Habib, who's in our industry, is really on the front lines of this stuff. So I don't profess to have a lot of this material be my own, but just pulling together from a lot of different pieces. So there's a lot of his work in here. And also I had a great conversation about a week ago with a financial advisor that I work with. He's not kind of your normal Wall Street, Kool-Aid, if you will, that everything is always perfect, type of individual. And he explained to me, that what we're experiencing is event-based demand destruction, right? So what does that mean? Well, as the name sounds, it's really what we're seeing is this demand destruction, this massive contraction in the economy that's based on this event, right? This global pandemic that we're experiencing. So, talked about the three different. Now, what I'm about to read from is in the context of bear markets, but you can talk about it any kind of economic contraction. So you've got structural. Structural is they're created by imbalances and financial bubbles. So think of 2008 when the mortgage market, the financial market imploded. These are typically the deepest and they take the longest to recover from. And even though the last few years, the economy has really been ticking up, the fact is that there was a many-year period where we were just kind of bouncing along the bottom. So those are typically the most painful. There's cyclical bear markets or cyclical contractions. That's the normal up and down, ebb and flow of booms and busts that are, common in capitalist society. These are kind of in the middle. And then you've got the event-based, right? And they can be something that I've been hearing a lot lately from different sources is that this could be the sharpest, but also the shortest, because event-based. So I'll give you some numbers. This is average. These are averages historically. Now this is as it relates to the stock market, but you can extrapolate from there. The average decline on the structural is 55%. On a cyclical, it's 32%. And on event-based, it's 28%. And then in terms of the average length, it is about 42 months for structural, 28 months for cyclical, and only 8 months for event-based. And then the average time to recover is almost 10 years for structural, which is in line with what we just saw after the financial crisis in 2008, around 4 years for cyclical, and only 1 year for event-based. So that, makes a fairly strong case that while it is very scary and very severe, and I'm just talking about the economic side. Of course, there's a whole human aspect and a health aspect of this, which is, the whole different story. But, typically from an economic standpoint, these things can be sharp, but they will oftentimes bounce back very fast and return to the status of where they left off. So if we've kind of established that, and the reason for that is once that event clears out, there's no structural impairment there, and we should be able to return to, again, to where, kind of where we left off if the right conditions are met. So let's talk about, so if it all is related to clearing past the event, it's all going to be, as many people have been saying, it's going to be about when we're able to resolve this health crisis, the actual situation that we're dealing with, that we're right in the thick of right now. So now this is the stuff where I'm going to borrow quite a bit. I'm going to give the references at the end. There's 2 videos in particular that Barry Habib from MBS Highway. There's one video he did that's available, I believe it was on March 19th, where he had this Dr. Roizen from the Cleveland Clinic on. And then there's another conversation with him on this one industry group that I can also reference the video. And he is speaking to another person, but talking about conversations he's had with this Mike Roizen. So I want to be cautious when I'm direct, have the direct source, and when I'm, quoting conversations that I've heard or seen in video. But so what he talked about is through this conversation with this Dr. Mike Roizen at the Cleveland Clinic, that there is therapeutic treatments that they're working on. You guys probably might have heard, I think the terms are chloroquine, and there's another one, zithromycin. There was and I don't know all the technical, there's an anecdotal study. I guess it was not I guess there's difference to do actual studies that are, I guess, more controlled, but there was anecdotal studies that there was, I believe, the patients in 3 days, up to 90% of them were feeling better, and they stopped shedding and spreading the virus earlier. They are in the process of, and there was better results in a test tube that was actually controlled, but then on the other study, it was anecdotal. I guess it wasn't as much controls, but that was in humans. And they're testing it right now as they speak in Italy, is my understanding, and we should start seeing the results sometime within the next week. So that's not a vaccine, but that's certainly something that would have us stop spreading it, less readily to as many people, and start having less people have the most severe symptoms that need the most care. So, once we come up with a therapeutic solution, because, the big thing is it's the surge, right? It's the surge that overwhelms our medical system when we don't have the ventilators and we don't have the beds and we don't have other things, that really is the major concern here. So there's other therapeutic solutions. So that's one, and I've been hearing more that there's some that are made to, I guess, block or lessen this surge of the antibodies, the way that this attacks us, that it attacks our lungs, and that it'll allow less people to be on respirators at all, and to get people off them sooner. So there's a full scale, full court press on to come up with these therapeutic, because again, the vaccines are going to take longer, but some of these things, anything that will have less people getting seriously ill and have them being less contagious, is going to really do its part in stemming the tide of this thing. And those drugs are already in the system, unlike a vaccine, which has to go through all these different tests, and it's more of a long drawn out process. These various things are already in the system, and that they're things that could be turned out fairly quickly once the results are a little bit more vetted. And I know there's been different things. It's so tough to cut through the noise, but right through, and this one I did hear with my own ears. So this Dr. Roizen, 4 out of the last 5 coronaviruses either went away or seriously declined in April. That there's something about that. Now, it doesn't mean that they were gone, but it means that they pulled back, and that they definitely pulled back and either went away. They perhaps came back again when the seasons changed again. But April seems to be a month where these things just don't like it. And he wasn't even, being a specialist in this stuff, sure. They're not sure. The science isn't clear on why that is, but that was another thing that was pretty encouraging. And then the last thing is that there was 4 companies, I believe, that put out a bid on the vaccines. And there's actually already, and this is not still going to be a quick fix. I'm not going against what we're hearing there, but he said that there's 2 companies that are already in human safety testing on vaccines. So there's absolutely progress, being made on that front. So that's kind of the stuff that I gathered from these 2 source videos that I can reference at the end. But now this is kind of my personal commentary from again, kind of pulling together all these different things that I've been reading and hearing and seeing, is that the event that we're talking about moving past, it's not the virus itself. All right. It's the surge that overwhelms the healthcare system. And then it's, of course, the economic shutdown right now that we're experiencing to try to limit that surge, to prevent the worst case scenario. So what could it look like to move past this event that we're talking in economic terms? Obviously, we use social distancing to hopefully have this thing where the peak is not as high. Now, I guess what I'm being told is when you flatten the curve, it gets drawn out longer. But again, I don't want to minimize any of the health aspects that people are dealing with, but people do get sick every year, and people have the flu and all that. But I'm not minimizing it. But what I'm saying is that it's when you have a very low mortality rate, but it spikes because we just can't get everybody the care that they need. So social distancing flattens the curve and prevents this major surge and this major peak from happening. These therapeutic treatments, some of them come online, and it's not going to be a silver bullet, but it might be a series of different advancements we make that, again, that have less people needing the most, the highest levels of care, and allowing people to become less contagious earlier. And that also does its part to lessen this surge and the biggest impact. Perhaps this April, this weather, this seasonality that was mentioned by, again, this isn't political, this isn't somebody's opinion, this is a doctor. And you can reference that video at the end, but there's something to that, because there's been different people saying, oh, that's all rumors and speculation. Apparently there's something to that. So that'll also be just one of the pieces of the puzzle. And then it might look like that we have, that we do have a kind of a piecemeal approach where there's certain regions that are going to be hotspots, and we need to be extra vigilant in those regions. And it might be that we do have to have extra vigilance with certain high risk, immunocompromised, elderly, those types of individuals may need to be extra vigilant for the foreseeable future. But at least when we've, again, prevented the wholesale surge and overrunning of our medical system, then we can start to apply those types of approaches where many of us can get back to a more normalized life. And then, of course, American industry, right? We saw it during World War II when we ramped up and kind of went into war mode there. We're starting to churn out medical supplies, ventilators, beds, masks, gloves, these types of things. I have full faith that American industry will come together and put these things in. And again, it's not that this virus goes away, but that it's just minimizing the damage by having too many people sick and too few of these types of things to treat them. And then when we start having significant progress or an end in sight as it relates to a vaccine, that's going to be one more piece of the puzzle. And then something that, again, trying to cut through the noise, herd immunity. Some people are saying herd immunity. So if you guys don't know what herd immunity is, it's when enough people get sick and they have survived, that then we start to build up as a society, the defenses against it, right? Because then, and there's some debate about whether or not you can get sick a second time with this. So again, I don't want to wade too far into the medical side, but I'm just want to present some other opinions. But in general, as people have gone through this and survived, they do create higher levels of defense against it. And so then the combination of the social distancing, the therapeutic solutions, this herd immunity where then people have survived it, it just becomes more difficult for the virus to continue to spread rapidly because there's less and less receptors or individuals for it to latch onto to get sick. So this is not a silver bullet. It's not a one size fits all, but when you piece all this together, it can make a strong case that, and what some of the people that I've been seeing in the medical professional field is through the combination of these different factors, sometime in the second half of April or early May, we may see this thing peak. And when it peaks, again, it doesn't mean that life goes back to normal immediately, but it means that immediate event, the full-scale economic shutdown, the panic and the fear that is gripping many, doesn't mean that we're not cautious and vigilant, but it allows us to perhaps return to some level of normalcy as we move down the other side of that. So that's kind of the case for how we might move past this event, perhaps a little bit faster than it might feel like when we're all cooped up in our houses the way that we have been. So as it relates to real estate and housing and the finance in the field that most of us are in, what did the housing market look like before this? Because if we've established that it's likely that we could return once we get through the immediate event, then let's look, what is it that we're returning to? So the housing market, there's just more demand than supply. The millennials coming on board, housing formations were just kind of getting back up and ramped up. Housing formations is people getting married and growing their family, having children, et cetera. And for a while that was suppressed after the Great Recession. But as we've been having better economic years these past few years, the demand, in particular at the entry level and the lower end of the kind of move up, the demand there is projected to be greater than supply, as far as the eyes can see. So you've got a really great floor underneath of things based on that. So I've been looking back, it was interesting because it just came up recently. For 3 years now, I've had the post, because we all know that Facebook reminds us of what happened last year at this time. It was like March of 2017, I had a post that said, inventory, inventory, wherefore art thou inventory, right? Like this has been going on for 3 years. We've had inventory issues or more, but we've been having these inventory issues, and every single year it's the same problem. So that's the backdrop, right? None of that has changed. The underlying demand hasn't changed. What has changed is that we're dealing with this global pandemic. So that is not going to change. And in fact, it's going to be exacerbated because right now new construction activity is suppressed because we're all shut in the house. So we're going to continue to have less supply than we might have, but the demand is still pent up and it's there. Affordability is improving. We've got lower rates than just about any other time in history. And wages up until a month ago have been increasing at a fairly nice clip. Now, a lot of debate about whether it's even and who's getting those gains and all that, but generally speaking, wages have been picking up, and therefore affordability has been increasing. Now, again, these stats right here that I'm about to read are borrowed right from Barry, but some pretty good indicators to look at. Home value to median rent. Currently, it's at 17. The 40+ year average is around 16.5. And right before we got in trouble at the financial crisis, the Great Recession, it was 24. So we're at 17, the home value to median rent, right around the 40-year average. Before we got in trouble in the financial crisis, it was 24. Home price to replacement cost. 1.59 currently, the 40-year average, 1.58, right at that 40-year average. Before the crash, it was 2, double. So almost 25% delta difference between where we were at then, before we got in trouble in the housing market, and today. So that's the backdrop. That's the housing market that we were all in, that we were all loving life about a month and a half ago before all this trauma hit around us. So again, we've established that with event-based, we can return once we get through that event. That's what we would be returning to. But if we had what I'm calling a great engine already in real estate, we're about to throw or have thrown some jet fuel on the tank. So let's take a look at what, if we return, we get through this event, what other things are going to be added into the equation. As it stands now, almost $6 trillion in stimulus, between fiscal stimulus, which is that bill that they just passed, just over $2 trillion, and then lending programs and commitments made by the Federal Reserve on the monetary front, over $6 trillion worth of stimulus. And that makes 2008 stimulus pale in comparison. And they're already talking about another package already coming out. I'm hearing rumblings again of Q4, Q1, that there might be another tranche of stuff. Even in our industry, there's some serious issues in the mortgage industry in the short term, and they're talking about additional Fed windows to non-bank lenders like ourselves. So there's $6 trillion already more or less committed, and that number is going to increase further. So this is unprecedented in scale on top of the housing backdrop I already gave you guys. We created 500,000 jobs in the first 2 months of this year. In January and February, again, whatever your opinion is, in a lot of cases, this economy was smoking hot leading up till the end of February. So we had one of the greatest economies in generations, apolitical, right? Every different political party say, I'm the one responsible. The other one says, I did it two administrations ago. Bottom line is we were creating jobs, wages were increasing, going very well for many, not for all, but for many. We are unleashing an unbelievable amount of cash flow into the economy with all this refinance activity. We had a spike to the lowest rates in history on what we're calling Manic Monday on March 9th. And now we've had some things where rates have backed off, but I do believe those structural issues in the mortgage industry are going to get fixed. And I think we'll return to the all-time lows, and in essence, up to $11 trillion, the entire mortgage market could be possible to be refinanced in the coming years, months and years, which would unleash and is already unleashing a massive amount of cash flow that as soon as people can get out of their homes and spend it, is going to just be further fuel to the stoke the economic coals, if you will. And then right now, I don't know whether you guys are following it or not, but there's an oil war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. In essence, what's going on is Russia, of course, doesn't like the United States in many cases. We have been, booming with our shale industry. Saudi Arabia has kind of allowed Russia to be part of this OPEC. They're not in OPEC, but they're in what's called OPEC Plus. And they basically, the Saudis just went public with their national oil company. And so they wanted to do well. And so they wanted to push oil prices up. And the only thing about American oil, the shale, is it's very expensive to get to because it's harder to extract because of, where it's at. So the Russians, they want to see us, they want to kind of stick a thorn in our side. They said, no, we don't want prices of oil to go up. We want it to go down, because when it goes down, then we'll have to shut down and it'll affect our oil industry. So they got into basically a spat. And then Saudi Arabia more or less said, we're going to pump oil through your nose until you say uncle first. And they're basically both fighting and just pumping an unlimited supply of oil into the marketplace, which was already driving prices down before the virus. Now with the virus, we've also got less demand. And there's some people that think that we could see oil at $10 a barrel, which would put gas prices very low. I don't know, mid ones, under 2%, certainly for a foreseeable future. That saves people a lot of money. Once people can get out of their homes, that's additional cash flow that's filtering through the economy. So that's really my case. When you guys all know, of course there's investors, but when people are buying homes, most of them are buying for a 10-year period or more, right? If we try to time the market perfectly, that's not what we're really doing. We want a home to be a good investment for a person, but really it's a place, as a roof over their head. And then oftentimes when we look back over history, it has help them create and generate wealth. So will home prices decrease when we could have unemployment to well into the double digits, 10, 15, 20, 25% in the short term? Absolutely. It's likely that that will be the case. Inventory will increase, as the, supply demand, as we step into a buyer's market. But I think as professionals, if we do it safely and we do it responsibly, that this very well could be looked back as a great, again, I'm not talking about the immediate weeks and, whether we're allowed to be showing or not allowed. I'll leave that to you professionals to figure out. But this time in history, as we're coming out the other side of this, I think could really wind up being a really great buying opportunity when you add the backdrop in real estate that I presented with then all of these other factors that I think are going to flow into the other side of this thing. There's no doubt that this market is going to shake off some of the weaker players in all the real estate, ecosystem, if you will. And I think there's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of misinformation. And I think clients in particular, now more than ever, are going to be looking for professionals to help guide them through this, to cut through the noise, to educate them, and to help them make smart choices. And I think that it'll allow, many of us to stand out and actually separate ourselves and really help people in a difficult time. But I think, my feeling is, my hopes is not only to create some hope in each of you, but to give you guys some stuff to be able to go out with conviction to speak to individuals. When we get through an immediate surge, there's still going to be fear. There's still going to be the virus floating around. This doesn't just go away. But again, if we can help people cut through some of that noise and articulate this case, I think we can really wind up helping a lot of people. So there's going to be less competition. There's going to be more options. Perhaps slightly lower prices in some cases, and we're still going to have record or near record low interest rates, in my opinion. That's my reason for optimism. I think it's easy, as I said, to focus on the negative and what we can't do right now, but I want to also focus on what we can do. So even if all of my kind of speculation or kind of opinion on this is wrong, the fact is there's still things that we can be doing whenever this ends and however it ends to put ourselves in the best position possible to come out strong. One thing that I started getting into with coaching a few years back, and I have not done all that well all the time with, is grabbing on time, right? When we're in the mix of life and work and business and appointments, it's so easy to get focused working in your business instead of working on your business. So I think one thing right now is that we all have unlimited. So I try to take once a month where I take a few hours and I work on planning and I work on doing the different projects that we don't have time to when we're really busy. And again, not always so successful at it, but it's something that at least I try to do. Well, right now we all have, built-in on time. We're forced into it. So what are some of those things that we could do? And when we open up for a Q&A, and also I'd be happy to take anybody else who can add to this list, because I'm just kind of brainstormed quickly on some of these things. Build out your database, or where possible, or clean it up. Reconnect with your database if you've kind of just had it but haven't really been doing anything with it. Update your website. Request reviews from past clients. Research or learn how to fully leverage your CRM. Most of them have things that you can find right in there on how to use them. Find anything on YouTube nowadays. That's a good one, I think. Write down or refine your unique selling proposition or your values. We have some that I put together at one time during one of these on times. Good news fast, bad news faster. Under promise, over deliver. Extreme accountability, for each member of the team. So just as an example. Research or implement that new technology. Strategize on and create a perfect customer journey via Zoom with your vendor partners. Plan out and write job descriptions for future hires if you plan to build a team. There's a great book, E-Myth Revisited, by Michael Gerber, and he talks about that. If you have plans on building a business, even if you're a business of one, Start with the end in mind, create the other different roles and responsibilities in the beginning and map it out. In the beginning, put yourself in each one of those roles. And then it'll become obvious who the next hire is and who the, where the next hire is, and you'll already have the job description laid out. Create email templates in Outlook. Just give me 1 second, guys.
If you have a question, you can begin to kind of prepare it, write it down, think about it, and when we can raise our hands through the chat box as well.
Sorry about that. My alarm was going off. So create email templates in Outlook, auto reply templates. If you find yourself writing the same thing over and over again, or something similar to it, it's not a great use of your time. What are those things that you go back? What are those things that you find yourself constantly writing? Make a template out of it. We can show you how to do that. I'll get back to that. Create milestone videos. So again, same thing. If you find yourself repeatedly having conversations or there's information you want to convey on a regular basis, I really enjoyed, meeting you for our buyer's consultation today. Our next steps are, thank you for your inquiry about our listing, about listing your home. Please check your email for some resources I'll be sending. So now they can see you, and it's just about connecting with the people. Script out a video series. Now you might not want to do, so those things you could do with just, on a camera, you flip your camera phone around and doing selfie mode, get a family member to help with it. But if you don't want to do a full video series when you're at home, script out the video series. One thing that we've done in our TIMs, we call them, the Mervin Mortgage Minute, was we just literally went back and looked at the questions that clients have been asking and realtor partners have been asking, and we scripted them out and we turned them into a video series. So, take some time to script those things out. Read that book. I know a lot of people, I don't know what your feelings are on this. Some people that have never done it in the past. I know people so I'm in a coaching program. There's some people that are very much into meditating and journaling. There's a segment that is, there's a segment that isn't. I'll tell you, there's some that weren't, who now are in this time of stress and anxiety. So something else to consider. So this isn't just business. It's just about how we can manage, our lives and our energy and our minds the best that we can in a difficult situation. Learn that skill. Connect with people and, be a light in what's a dark world for many right now. Now you can apply this to business and connecting with your database, past clients, prospects, right? When you call them and you're not just generally asking like, hey, when are you gonna get back out looking again? And you're genuinely want to know whether they're doing okay. That's how that's how I think how you connect with people generally, which happens to be good in business often. But right now, if we can just be a light to other people, it'll actually help, I think, our own moods and, where our heads are at. And just help inspire and support other people around you as much as you can, but particularly your prospects and clients. Just try to connect in a heartfelt way, phone calls, videos, just generally, again, checking in on people. Be positive, be real, right? Nobody wants somebody that just, doesn't see what's going on and the fact that there is a lot of suffering and a lot of issues, but be real and try to be positive because perception is reality. And I think that, collectively, if we can kind of stay positive and see what's on the other side of this, I think we can have good outcomes. Now, as I said, my main goal was to kind of rally some industry, people in the industry. Definitely want to see people be successful coming out the other side of it. This is the only very, very short, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, infomercial, if you will. Our team is set up to support with these types of things all the time, right? So first of all, you can email Matt at Bill Mervin Team. Matt, for those of you who don't know, is a business development manager. We've taken the team and we've segmented out. We've got somebody that's specifically out there to generate, to create, and then support relationships, as opposed to just opening a relationship and then moving on to the next. So that's Matt's job, is to get in there with you guys and to help. So if you email, we will get you out a video on creating those email templates, a how-to video. We're going to give you kind of a quick pro tips, half a page on some best practices on video creation. And I'll also reference the 2 videos that you guys can watch so you can hear it right from the horse's mouth rather than my own. And these are types of things like creating the video series and strategizing on a perfect customer experience. These are things that we already do with our partners. So in that, if you have interest, once we're through this, in working with somebody that's actually going to roll up their sleeves with you in helping to generate business and to grow your business, that is precisely what our team model is set up to have. Matt and Ashlyn, who's our marketing support person that works alongside of Matt. And we've got a videographer and an editor, AJ, who helps in those types of things. We've got a green room in our office. So again, I'll keep that aspect of it short, but that's specifically what we're set up to do. So no matter whether you have interest in that or not, email us. We'll send you a couple deliverables, a couple of things that you can take action on. Certainly if you have interest in taking that further, once we get through all of this, that's what we're set up to do. We've got a team member, a lot of mortgage people are tied up in refinances right now. We've got somebody specifically working on refinances so that I can personally, and I have another individual who can help just on the buyer side, because right now the opportunities are more difficult to come by and you want somebody that's going to give them your full attention. And that's what we're set up to do. So that, guys and gals, is it for the presentation side of it. I hope some of this has been helpful and useful for you guys. And I want to open it up for any questions and answer. I'll do my best. And if I don't know, I'll let you know that and I'll try to find the answer.
What is the genetic makeup of, no, I'm just kidding.
I have a question.
Great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amber Cruz. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams in Morristown in New Jersey. Love you guys. Thanks for having this. And I just had a quick question because we're seeing that a lot of credit scores, the minimums are being pushed to 640, 660-ish. And, this time last week or 2 weeks ago, buyers that had a 620 were pre-qualified and ready to go. So there's going to be, a conversation that we need to have with those clients, right? Because those are our clients who are going to be kind of stuck in the middle where they're not ready yet, although they thought they were. So what advice can you give us to give to them? And what do you think we could be doing to help get them ready?
This is a whole separate conversation. I'll give my best to give you a high level and give you a couple pointers because I'm living it right now. And this is a whole separate, as much as I want to stay positive, there's a lot of challenges in the mortgage business right now. The way that mortgages work is nobody really lends the money and then keeps it for 30 years. We sell the servicing rights. Companies will pay money up front to then be able to collect those mortgage payments as long as the person has that mortgage. And then they can use that as an asset to leverage and go out and get more money to make money with. So that's how the mortgage business works. Well, what's happening is the value of that servicing, the value that somebody's willing to pay to get a mortgage really, and I'm going to oversimplify here, is dictated by 2 things. One, the default risk. All right, the likelihood that the people are actually going to pay, which historically are very, very stable. And then secondly is the prepayment risk, and the likelihood that it's going to get paid off. Because when a mortgage company makes a loan, they pay money up front for that servicing, they actually don't get their money back or break even till somewhere between year 3 and year 4. It goes with the territory. Sometimes you lose a little, sometimes you make a little, but that's just how it works. Well, right now, nobody knows. The default risk is very, very high. Right? Because all these people are going to lose their jobs. And then there's even more uncertainty as it relates to this forbearance agreement and whether that's going to be considered a default, whether it's not going to be considered a default. So nobody knows what the default risk is, but it's very elevated. And then there's the prepayment risk. Interest rates have been all over the maps because nobody wants to buy mortgages because they don't know who's going to pay and who's not going to pay. Then even if the Federal Reserve is trying to push interest rates down, interest rates go up because nobody wants to buy them. It's supply and demand. And so we had a day last week, I kid you not, that we quoted 3.375 in the morning and it was 4.75 at the end of the day. And it was 4% the next day. normally now I'm going to stay away from interest rates because there's so many different scenarios, but we're now back down in the mid-ish threes. But it's a separate conversation, but it's all over. It's volatile. So the fact is nobody knows whether they're going to keep the mortgages for a month or whether they're going to keep them for 10 years because interest rates are all over the place. So the two things that make it worth, that determine the value of mortgages is the default risk and the prepayment risk. And the default risk is very high and nobody knows how much the prepayment risk is. So what's happening is that it's drying up. The people that want to buy these things is drying up. And ultimately that's creating, there's another technical aspect to it, which is the Fed is trying to help. They drive interest rates down, what should drive interest rates down. But then mortgage companies, the way that they lock interest rates, they buy something called a hedge. And then when the interest rates are driven down, they lose money on that hedge. And now the loans may not close. They offset that by selling the loans. And we don't know how many loans are going to close or not going to close. So a bunch of companies, large and small, to the biggest company in the United States, are having what are called margin calls. They all got to put up money to be able to stay in business. And it's creating a global, a credit crunch in the mortgage space. And what happens when that happens is everybody starts getting away from the riskiest stuff. So bond loans, which are down payment assistance loans, if they're not completely gone, are going to be gone almost, I think you'll see them just about all gone by the end of the week if they're not gone already. Lower credit scores, as you mentioned, higher debt ratios. We are just in a tightening cycle that is going to be here until we are clearly heading out of or heading out of a recession. You may see the credit score minimums come up even further from here. Nobody knows exactly where the bottom is going to be on this thing, or the top, I should say. So probably more information than many of you wanted, but I want you guys to understand when you see this, you're going to see it wholesale across the board. This isn't one person being more difficult or their lending stand. This is what's happening. These are the companies behind the scenes buying the mortgages. These aren't your, the mortgage people that you work with. I don't want to make this, like I said, it don't be a sales pitch, but I can tell you it's when you have a volatile time, you've got to work with somebody that knows their stuff. Somebody that can stay ahead of the changing guidelines. I called up multiple mortgage real estate agents right now that I work with and said, hey, this isn't shut off yet, but fair warning, this may get shut off within the month. And, so proceed with caution. So more than ever, when things are changing, when everything's the status quo and everything's been the guidelines for the last 2 or 3 years. But the fact is, I think you just got to tell, I think this is more of a case than ever to say, listen, this is why you want to work with me, because I can talk to you intelligently about these things and help you navigate them. It's why you want to work with my lender rather than the person that you found online, because things are changing rapidly, more so than I've ever seen in this industry. And you want somebody that's going to help you navigate them. As far as people with lower credit, I called my team yesterday. I said, credit repair is back in vogue. Like, we kind of got away from it because we could find ways to make deals work. Find yourself a good credit repair person or work with a lender that has a good credit repair person. And quite frankly, we're going to have to save more money or we're going to have to get gifts. But these like super low down payment and certainly down payment assistance stuff are going to be gone for the foreseeable future. So I hope I didn't overtalk that one, but it's kind of complex, but there's no easy solution. It's changing daily. I'm in a coaching program with people from around the country, and we're meeting for a roundtable every Saturday from 4 till 5:30 to talk about just this and how we stay ahead of it and navigate this changing hour to hour at times.
Hey, Bill, we had a question come in from Aaron. He said, what are you projecting when it comes to short sales and pros and cons for first-time home buyers?
I think that they're going to do everything that they can to keep there from being, mass foreclosures like there were in the past through this forbearance program that they just rolled out. I want to be very clear. This forbearance is not forgiveness. So right now it's 3 months, but at the end of this time, the money's still owed. Now you can then try to get a modification, which may or may not be granted, where they would adjust the terms, take the months they weren't able to be paid and put them on the back end of the mortgage. But for people that are affected, that just don't have the money, then by all means reach out. But we want to be careful if we are fielding questions. Hopefully you're not fielding too many of these questions. But first of all, we want to be careful to field these questions because I'm getting calls from people that I know can make a mortgage payment because there's misinformation in the media and even certain politicians they feel like, oh, well, I heard that we didn't have to make our mortgage payment. That'll be very dangerous for the housing market if that happens. And of course, we want people to need it to get that support, but it's not so easy as like, we don't have to make payments for 3 months. So I want to say that first. I think they're going to do everything that they can to keep people in their homes. First of all, it's destabilizing with the whole virus issue going on for people to be removed from their homes. So I think they're going to do everything they can, and they've stepped in far more aggressively this time around than the last crisis. But that said, there's going to be certain industries and businesses that are impacted more than others. And after we get through the heart of the crisis, there's going to be some people that unfortunately are left behind. And there will be more foreclosures than there's been the last 10 years, is my opinion. And yeah, I mean, I think that when you have that supply and demand, banks don't want to own the homes. They don't want to deal with the upkeep. They don't want to pay the taxes. And it will create opportunities for some people. So if I was a real estate agent right now, I'd absolutely be brushing. And I wasn't here the last time around in 2008. Some people adapted in after 2008 and did very well after the last financial crisis in specializing in short sales, foreclosures, et cetera. If that wasn't you, I would be doing that right now for sure.
We had another question come in from Rachel Shaw. She said, when he said it, the home value to median rent was 17, what does that mean? Can you explain that a little bit more?
So I would say if the rent was $1,000, if the median rent was $1,000 and the median home price was 170,000, that would be a 17-to-1 home price to rent. And so when home prices start getting way out ahead of median of rent, so I think what was the number I referenced for, again, it was, what did I say, 20? Anyway, I had it here. Yeah, it was 24. So that means if the median rent was, and it's not, I'm just using because it's an easy number. If the median rent was $1,000 today, then the median sales price is 170,000. Before the financial crisis, which was at its heart a housing issue, my point in all that segment was that this is not a housing issue, this is a virus issue, and that the housing market was strong, and there's a bunch of things that are going to be feeding into the system that I think can make it even much stronger. But that was saying that at the time that we got in trouble, that housing got in trouble, if the median rent was 1,000, the sales price was 240,000. At 17-to-1 means if the median rent is 1,000, it's 170,000. That's a massive difference. We were overvalued in 2007.
We had another question come in from Dave Marcola. So will it make it more difficult for many to buy until we're through this, especially FHA buyers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a huge segment of the FHA buyers are going to get, so there's two ways that lenders, there's a direct and an indirect way right now that lenders are basically opting out of the FHA market. And in some cases, VA as well, USDA, et cetera. They call it the government lending. One of them is they're outright raising the minimums. And then the other ways, there's other lenders that say, we don't want to go through the whole process of, changing what's available in our system and all these different, guidelines and all the stuff that goes along with that. They're indirectly doing it by just pricing themselves out at. I've seen some lenders that'll still do a 620 FHA, but you look at it and it's got 5 points. Nobody's going to pay 5 points, right? They don't even let you pay 5 points. So that's their indirect way of saying, we don't want it. We'll let you know when we do. So absolutely, positively, the government market is going to be impacted. There are still some good, conventional products, 3% down, 5% down. But, government FHA, VA, USDA is going to be impacted. I think you're going to see, as I said, I think you're going to see, 660 is pretty much here. I don't think it'll get to a 680 minimum, but I think 640, it'll be very costly, but you may see some lenders do 640. And then what'll happen is it'll tighten. And then when it's clear that we've got our arms around the default risk, and that we're heading out the other side, not through the health and the virus issue, but heading out the other side, And we've got wrapped our arms around the default risk and how many people are going to be out of work for a sustained period of time, what segments of the market are going to be the most impacted, et cetera. Somebody will dip their toe back in and they'll be the 620, and then the others will see, hey, they're making money over there, and then they'll want to, and that's the natural ebb and flow of things. But immediately, you're going to see credit score minimums rise. You're going to see debt ratio maximums decrease. You're going to see down payment assistance more or less go away. The non-qualified mortgage, for anybody who knows what that is, these are the bank statement programs, the debt service coverage loans. I have friends in the industry that had 8, 9, 10 loans in their pipeline, appraisals in, loans approved, locked loans, and it just evaporated a week ago. They don't fund them, they're not funding them, or sending them back to you. So that part of the market completely evaporated. Jumbo mortgages over 510,000 are still there, but they're going to see, same stuff, lower debt ratios, lower, bigger down payments, all that stuff. We're definitely in a tightening cycle, and the whole, scope of mortgage products are going to be affected, but specifically the government space.
We had a question come in from Eric Moz. Oh no, I'm sorry. He just was saying he had a chat. I appreciate it. And then Bobo Beck said, "Do you see this impacting current FHA financing that's under contract?"
The answer is it could. I know companies. Again, not a pitch for us, but we right now are trying to adapt and we repositioned. We shut our lock desk down on Friday, and we repositioned our lock desk in a way that would allow us to be able to give us the best chance of closing the stuff that's already locked in this space. But I know companies that are not honoring locks and are just they're not in a position. There's no buyers. The buyers are on strike. They don't want it. There's no buyers for it. If there's no buyers for it, then the companies run the risk of, and what's particular, so again, to get overly technical, the issue with government loans is that the reason that we can, that so much money gets funneled into it, even though it's riskier, is because the payments are guaranteed. So a person that buys the servicing rights, even if the person doesn't make the mortgage payment, they're still responsible for making that payment to the person that owns that bond. So in a time when nobody knows who's going to pay and who's not going to pay, to own an asset that might go into default, and then while it's in default, you've got to pay the property taxes and still make the principal and interest payment to the person who bought it, is not a great investment strategy. So in particular, they're in strike in that space. And so certain companies who are worried if they are stuck holding that loan, and that's going to then what happens is that the companies, they have what are called warehouse lines. They make the loans and then they sell the servicing off, and then that replenishes their warehouse line, and then they make new loans. Well, if you get stuck with too many of them on your books, you don't have any room to make new loans, and you go out of business. I mean, that's the dumbed down version of it. So yes, there are companies who are just entirely refusing to close loans. I would reach out individually to anybody you have where these are locked with, and ask them what their company is doing or not doing to prevent that from happening. Some companies are, some companies are not.
It was all the questions we had in the chat box. Does anybody else have any questions they want to raise on video or in the chat thread? Mr. Hunter, good to see you. Seva.
So I wanted to stick with positive stuff. The lending stuff is I don't want to say it's scary, but it's I mean, we're in the heart of it. But I had a really great text message from, I'm in my coaching program. There's branch managers, great producers or CEOs of companies. And there was some, everybody said it's keep your head down. It is minute by minute, and it's very, very challenging, but everybody said hunker down. Doesn't mean these things, these lower credit, the down payment, that's not coming back in 45 days, but we'll be through. A lot of people believe in, and it's a fluid timeline, but 45 days, 1 month, 2 months, we're going to start seeing the other side of this thing and seeing the landscape. And I'll be happy to do another kind of town hall style or another meeting format like this to say, okay, right now we don't know where the dust is going to settle. Once we know where the dust is going to settle, then we'll be able to kind of formulate what the lending landscape looks like moving out of here. And we can talk about how to best position and to just deal with that current operating environment at that time. But right now it's changing rapidly. But we will get through this, and we will come out the other side stronger. And I think we're going to have a massive boom once we do get through it. And quite frankly, there will be less people eating at the table, unfortunately for some. But so I think if we keep our head down, stay positive, focus on doing what's right with our clients, I do think we come out the other side of this stronger. And I want to do my part, and I hope we'll all do what we can. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys have any questions, you can send us messages directly, team@BillMervinTeam, or to myself, Matt@BillMervinTeam. Thanks again, Bill. Thanks for taking some time with us today, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye,
Appreciate
everyone.
it. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.